Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. In this episode, I'm talking to Sam Cavitt, owner of Paradise Theater in Hawaii. Sam is a good friend, a veteran designer of private residential theater spaces, and one of the most popular CEDIA Expo instructors of all time. Sam, aloha, and thanks for joining me.
Aloha, and thank you for having me on your series. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And, I'm here in Carmel, Indiana, where it's essentially 12 o'clock noon, and you're joining me at 6 a.m. in Hawaii. You really have to start your day early there when you live in Paradise, don't you?
We do start early in order to stay in touch with everybody else, but I don't get a whole lot of sympathy because Paradise is a great place to live. The early mornings is my favorite time of the day. So often I'm on the water about this time of day as well. So it's not so bad.
I've never lived in Hawaii, but I spent a summer on the West Coast, and it was a similar experience where you had to start your day early, but it wasn't as painful as perhaps on the East Coast when you get up super early, because it is just beautiful. The sun hits you and you're wide awake. So I definitely don't feel sorry for you. Hey, I know a lot of folks know who you are in the custom integration business, and anyone that's ever read Residential Systems or even Residential Tech Today with your new article series that you just started, kind of knows what you're all about. But for listeners, let's talk about what you do for a living. You design private theaters, and those are different in a way that you explain quite often in your articles than home theaters. So can you kind of get into why you call them private theaters versus home theaters?
Sure. It's really to identify the fact that there is a difference between levels of performance and levels of design and execution. First thing I like to say is anybody who's enjoying home theater, cinema, music, sound, any of this stuff, I applaud. Our industry, I applaud, because when you think about our lives and the things that we work hard, and one of the most important things that is good for people is entertainment and spending time with people that we love. So home theater allows that to happen. So it's I think a very good thing for people to be involved with. But for us, Paradise Theater, what we started off with is the vision of, we kind of got into it early, and when home theater first came around, it was something special. It was amazing, but we only had 5 channels, and the video wasn't very good, and the audio wasn't even very good.
And when you say channels, not 5 channels of television, 5 channels of audio.
Yeah, well, actually, I was around when there were only 3 channels of television, so
yeah, me too.
I remember those days. But
right.
But it was left, center, right, left side, right side, and sub. That's what we had. And it was extraordinary. It was amazing. It was new. And people got excited about it and became enthusiastic about having home theaters. So calling it a home theater was just great because it was brand new and it was something that people were pursuing. But it's become somewhat commoditized. And with what Paradise Theater does, and our raison d'etre is to create excellence. It's in our DNA. It's what Paradise Theater is all about. Our whole team follows that, I guess, inspiration from me, because that's the way I'm wired up. So we want to differentiate what Paradise Theater does from more common type of, and when I say common, it's not a bad thing, but from the standard level of performance. Paradise Theater takes it to the best possible level. And there's certainly room for that. So that's why we do that. It's not to become arrogant or off-putting. We certainly don't want to be that way, because all we do is things about entertainment and family and togetherness and fun. So why would you want to be arrogant about stuff like that? It's supposed to be enjoyable. So that's why we call it private cinema.
Oh, private cinema.
And there's a reason I'm doing that too, because I've got an initiative that I want to talk about a little bit later to help promote the awareness of this great thing that we get to be involved in.
So how does what you're doing? You're designing the room. Are you working with custom integrators on every project? How are you different from a traditional just custom integrator versus a theater designer that you are?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because we work with an integration partner on every theater that we do. Paradise Theater does not sell equipment. We do not rep lines. There are products that we admire because of their performance and the results that they deliver. But we're an architect, if you will, of a theater space. So we engineer the space, we design the performance characteristics of the space, and we base our design on a very well engineered process that we've developed over the years, so that we can always create a level of performance that we can rely on. And then we integrate that with aesthetics, and it's a very important aspect of all that. And so we do the design ourselves, or we work with interior designers, we work with architects and so forth. But on the same level with the technology, even though we will do the engineering to determine what systems would be appropriate, kind of like choosing the right engine for a plane. You want to make sure it'll fly over the mountains. You don't want to be left short of horsepower to get over the mountains. Well, the same thing with the system for theater. We engineer the performance characteristics that be required, and then we work with the integrator who provides it, installs it, configures it, and services it. So everybody's got their core competency, and that's how we function within that team of people involved in building the theater.
And when you use the word private, it's always a dedicated space then? You're never doing any of these common areas and just making them really great for, a cinematic experience and living.
I like this whole dialogue about media room versus private theater or home theater and stuff like that. It's all based on the physics of the space and the characteristics of the space. If somebody wants very, very high performance audio and they want to combine it in a kitchen great room, glass walls and floor, kind of like my living room area, you can get a certain level of performance, but you're never going to be able to achieve certain things like a quiet room that will give you the ability to hear the smallest details, which is important. Imagine if you were drinking a fine wine, but you were smoking a cigar at the same time. You might not taste all of the nuance of that fine wine in that environment. Same thing in a room that has distractions and so forth. So that being said, if somebody says, I want a room that I can play games with, I can have a pool table, I want a bar in it, or whatever the case may be, but I also want a true cinematic experience, well, that's actually a more challenging project than just a rectangular cubic room that we create a private cinema in. We could do it, and we can do it, and we have done it. So that whole dialogue between a media room and a private cinema or private theater is sometimes, I think, needs to be investigated a little bit further, because it's, there's a phrase, a rose is a rose is a rose. Well, not always, right? There's some beautiful, great roses, and there's some that just have thorns. So we would be willing and happy to be engaged in all of those things. And again, my house in Hawaii, I've got a big window that overlooks the ocean, and I'm not going to cover that up. So in my living room, that's I've got an LCD screen and a surround sound system. So that's my living room. There's nothing wrong with that. We have a lot of fun here. But when it comes to designing, we have to look at what we're trying to achieve. So that's part of what we're about, is looking past those labels and saying, what are we trying to achieve? And if our clients know what's possible and what's available, we can have that conversation with them very effectively. And so they can say, oh yeah, I get it. I do want that media room that shares space in my kitchen, but I also want to have a place where I can really listen to the music and the soundtracks that I love very, very well. And so, and many of our clientele have the means to have both, the best of both worlds.
So what is your background that got you into this business, this specific business? Do you have a degree? Are you kind of school of hard knocks like a lot of guys that I talk to in this industry?
I guess you'd say I'm the school of hard rocks rather than hard knocks, because I grew up as a musician, and I played musician I played music for about 60 years, and I played the drums for over 50 years. And you know, trying to become a rock star is how I grew up, and that was my background. And so I studied music in college, and decided that fame and fortune was my future, and went for it. When I realized that was probably not going to happen in a very timely manner, the way I wanted it to, I made a shift and got into design. And again, that kind of, as I look back in my life, I said, that's it talks to who I am. I am driven to create. I'm driven towards things that are beautiful and are, you know, of that nature. So I got into designing high-end products for the high-end residential market in Southern California, and discovered home theater. And when I discovered home theater, it was like a homecoming, because as a musician, when I was playing the drums, and the drummer always has the band, the drums, the sound system, and all that stuff, because you got to. And so I learned enough about all of the technology and acoustics in order to make our band sound good and stuff like that. So I was always very interested in it. And when the home theater came about, I guess you'd say, it was a great place for me to land. And people always ask me, how do you get there? I said, well, you can't get there from here, but I was lucky because I got there and started doing the home theater designs, and, you know, went through a few iterations, and finally started a company called Media Environment Design, which is our corporate entity. And we did a lot of different things in the industry. We did, like you said, the teaching and so forth, in many different characteristics at CEDIA. And then we just realized that private theater, private cinema was our passion. That was our purpose. So we created the company Paradise Theater. That's our company name that does theater design, and, you know, we focus 100% on that now. So that's a bit of the history. It was just me for a long time, and then I've added people as the company has grown and as our scope has grown. And we now have two acoustic engineers. We've got an architectural designer. We've got an interior designer, several project managers, several CAD designers that work full-time for Paradise Theater. Working from home right now because nobody's going into the office, but we're blessed to have that capability of being able to do that. So that's where we started, and that's where I started, and we've become a team, and it's pretty exciting.
What about those early days? Like, what were your first projects? Were they, did you get to know custom integrators and just say, hey, I've got some ideas? How do you dive right into that first design that you did, or first couple designs?
Actually became an integrator, because when we first, everybody was learning. I always tell people, back in those days, we did everything wrong, but we were all excited about it, you know, because we didn't have good video, we didn't have good audio, we didn't know what small room acoustics really required, which we really have that very well understood now. We've got capabilities. We've been fortunate because we've been along the lines learning it as the industry has learned what to do with small room acoustics. So we went to the dealers in our area, and they said, oh, we don't need that. We have interior designers. We don't need a theater designer. We'll just do it ourselves. So we said, well, we have to do it ourselves. We started a company and got some lines and created a showroom and did that whole thing. And oh my goodness, to become an integrator, that's a very complicated, hard industry. You've got so many things to know and so forth. So that was good for me, I believe, because it allowed me to understand that side of the business very well. And when I realized I didn't really want to be an integrator, I wanted to focus on the design and the production of private cinemas, that I still have that background and that understanding of what it takes to be an integrator. So there's a good synergy between Paradise Theater and the integrator community. So but it was, we thought, oh, everybody's going to welcome us with open arms. Yay, just what we've been waiting for, a theater designer. And they didn't really react that way, but, you know, all's well that ends well, right?
Exactly. Before we continue our conversation with Sam Cavitt, let's take a short break for a word from our sponsor.
Thanks for listening to Residential Tech Talks. Today's episode is brought to you by SONY. Sony's OLED TVs and Master Series meet the strict criteria of the top engineers and makes beautiful images a reality. Their 4K HDR TVs pair the brilliance of 4K with the brightness, color, and detail of high dynamic range. See how every scene comes to life with extraordinary realism. Discover a new level of immersive, cinematic audio at home. With Dolby Atmos and acoustic surface audio, you'll enjoy three-dimensional surround sound that takes your breath away. See everything new from the world of Sony USA, including electronics, the new PlayStation 5, movies, music, and TV shows. Visit www.sony.com to learn more.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Sam Cavitt, owner of Paradise Theater. Sam, we talked about how you got into this business. How did you end up in Hawaii?
Well, I got married here. I grew up, my wife and I both grew up in San Diego. We're both native San Diegans. And, it was, I guess you might say, almost a small town when we were young. So that's how long ago it was that it was a small town. But when we got married in Kauai and then we came to Maui for the rest of our honeymoon, it was like a homecoming. We both looked at each other and said, this is where we belong. And we just felt like where we belong. And we made a deal right then and there. We would retire there. And then within a couple of years, my wife says, you're never going to retire. So let's go live in Hawaii. And I thought, why not? But we can do what we do. And by that time, I already had a team of people working with Paradise Theater. So our corporate offices are still in Carlsbad, California. And that's where our team is located. So it allowed us to kind of change some of the ways we did business. I wanted to have a more efficient process, and the old school process was Sam drives to the job site and looks at things. Well, now my team either does a Zoom meeting so that we're more immediate in reacting to questions and support issues and so forth, or they fly or drive to the project site. And then I arrive at the project site at critical points, and at commissioning and stuff like that. But we just, we do some work here in the islands, but it's not our most of our work is in the big metropolitan areas and the resort areas around the country and around the world. But we just live here because we love the lifestyle, and you know, I'm as happy. There's a thing called island fever, and that means what people mostly mean by island fever is I got to get off the rock. I'm feeling claustrophobic. I need to go somewhere away from this island. It's 2,500 miles away from the next landmass. For me, it's the opposite. If I'm off the island, I get island fever to come back home. Because I'm very, very satisfied living in Hawaii. So,
see, that was like when I lived in New York. I didn't want to leave the grid of Manhattan. It's a lot different, but it's a similar kind of comfort.
When you're where you belong, you're where you belong.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you're a surfer as well. I mean, I've seen you talk about that a lot. I heard you talk about that a lot. Are you still a surfer, or do you have to retire?
I love to surf.
Okay.
We're getting a swell this weekend, and I'm planning on taking a new board that I just grabbed out this weekend and try it out. Hopefully, it's the right size and shape and works well. But no matter what, I'll have fun.
Nice.
I love the water. I surf. There's a sport that we do out here, Hawaiian outrigger canoe paddling, which is amazing because we either one person or up to 6 people in a canoe, and we paddle. I've paddled between every island except for I have not paddled from Oahu to Kauai, which is about 100 miles.
Ooh, okay.
Of a paddle. So I've paddled from Maui to Big Island several times, around Maui, Maui to Lanai, Maui to Molokai, Maui to Oahu. And it's quite an experience to leave one landmass in a small craft, powered by yourself, and then go to another landmass. It's kind of a sense of adventure. So,
oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That's what I do for fun.
Yeah. Wow. Not bad. But well, being landlocked in the Midwest now, I can't really relate, but I can imagine what that must be like. Though it sounds amazing. So you've really given back to the industry in your over the years with your CEDIA training. So one of the things I remember, and I believe the reason I was able to connect with you initially to write for residential systems was because you were always getting that favorite instructor vote from the attendees that went to your class. And I just wondered if you could recall some of the classes you've taught over the years and how you keep the attention of these guys for the hours that you would teach, because some of those classes were pretty long, right? Like 3-hour courses.
Yeah. We actually had some full day courses back in the day. We created a home theater design course that got split up into smaller segments as well. But honestly, our industry, people are engaged, people are excited, and that's one thing that we've done right, is that people are excited about what we do. And I think that there's no reason not to be excited about the things that we do. But when you start to talk for several hours about technology and how to do things in a classroom, it is hard. I think I'm excited. I'm really passionate about what it is that I do. It's funny, I play the drums now at my church, and the pastor of my church says, don't ever ask Sam about sound, because he will tell you what he knows, and you'll be there for a while. Because I love it, and I want to share it, and I want other people to appreciate it and love it too. So, I think that there's that. I feel like our industry is a best kept secret. As big as we think we are, the public doesn't really know about us very much, and they know about us almost peripherally, and they don't understand. I had a friend that she's one of the South America reps for Harman Luxury, and she told me that it's like a pleasure unexploited. That it's as if we had invented wine and hadn't told the world yet. And what if you had that? Wouldn't you want to get that word out? So to me, from the early days when I taught a lot about technical classes and how to and so forth, well, there's a lot of people that know how to, and frankly, there are companies that know how to. So in my mind, an integrator is serving a client very well to engage with a company like Paradise Theater. There are others. I'm not the only person that does comprehensive and high-level engineering and design of private cinemas. So even though it's kind of a shameless plug, it's not totally, because there are others. But if there's teaming up that way, it's not necessarily so much of a service to talk about how to do all the nuts and bolts, something, one-day class that's taken, frankly, now 30 years to learn how to do. But what I'm transferring to is talking about how to explain that to our clientele and how for us to get the word out to the clientele better. And so that we have an industry that people are coming to us for, and they're not waiting and seeing us as a commodity. And we'll get that if we have to. We'll decide if we've got budget left over to do a private cinema. I want them to come to us and say, and this happens a lot. We see it nowadays a lot. We're building a new home. We've got an entire floor that's dedicated to entertainment, and its cornerstone is a private cinema. I think that's a healthy thing for the entire industry that's happening, but we need to see that more and more. Sure. So I've kind of transferred my energy into evangelism of the great opportunities that we could provide clients. And so I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but that's where I'm at these days.
No, I figured a lot of it had to do with passion and just some of the design sensibilities. So do you have a signature room design that you'd say that's really, that it always comes back to something an element that you always want to include, or is every room really unique based on a client and how they come to you, and maybe coordinating it with the look of the house and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's every theater is a bespoke creation.
Okay.
But because it's a functional, a theater is a very interesting design problem because you've got to achieve certain things. You've got to achieve the right sight lines, the right visual aspects. So there's the engineering and the design of all those relationships, the seating, sight lines, the size of the screen, the light, the projection, the location. All of that has to be calculated and engineered. And then that has to coordinate with the sonic environment, the acoustic environment. So we've got, you know, the whole problem of low frequency. So that's, you know, location, location, location. If you're in the wrong location, you're not going to get good bass. And so all of that's got to be figured out. So we have developed a process. It's kind of funny because over the years, I thought, well, we could create packages because we're smart. We know what we're doing. And, you know, we do the same thing over and over again. But what we realized is that in every one of our projects, our clients' projects, you have 2 rows, 3 rows, you have an entry, you have a location of the entry, and all these variables that you have to deal with, that the package had so many pieces that needed to be customized that we didn't see the value for us in approaching it that way. So what we did is we sat back and we looked and we said, look what we've done. We've created a process that starts from the first interview with the client or the client representative all the way down through the early conceptualization, the functional engineering, the final engineering, the integration with the design, and all of these steps that we take. And at the end of the day, that process allows us to deliver excellence always. That's a phrase that I put on my website because I told my team, that's what we do, excellence always. And the process is our signature design because it allows us to create the vision of our client with their needs and requirements and result in something that, well, provides something that gives that result. So there's no, you know, hey, it's all Art Deco, it's all modern, I love design, I love creativity and beauty. But at the end of the day, it's got to, you know, every luxury car starts to look like every luxury car in a way, especially the high performance ones, because there are certain physical things that are required to make it perform. Well, that's the same thing with the theater, is that there are certain things that need to happen in order for it to be a great experience for our clients. So there's a similarity, you know, the arrangement, seating, and all those relationships.
Sure.
But the creativity is when we mold that into a design that maybe interior designers come to us with this vision of a room that's problematic. And then we've been able to take that vision and the functional aspect of the theater, I call it the chassis, and meld them together into something that's unique. It wins on all levels, great aesthetics, great performance. You know, that's what our mission is on every theater. So.
Very good. And so I want to transition to what your article series is for Residential Tech Today. You're really going into this this idea of the modern movie experience, the cinema, the commercial theater experience, and how it's kind of it's being threatened right now by not only COVID-19, you know, shutdowns, but just a change in taste maybe, and things that are occurring just as a trend, and how perhaps the private cinema is one of those last refuges of this art form. And I just wanted to kind of let you tell your story a bit from your own words.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Because, you know, a friend of mine, Tim at Barco, you've probably spoken to Tim. He's a great enthusiast as well, a great evangelist for what we do. He and sorry, Tim, I'm going to steal your thunder, but you'll say it again anyway. He says nobody buys a $250,000 projector. Well, they do, but they don't buy it because they want a projector. They buy it because they want this experience. They want, whether it's a art wall or whether it's a great private cinema with the best picture that you could possibly have. That's the tool, or that's the engine that will deliver that experience. So the client wants that experience. So when you step back and you say, well, what is it that we're actually selling? Am I selling private cinemas? Or am I selling or creating a place where people can enjoy an art form? And whether that art form is music or it's called games and art form, that people create these games, and it's an entertainment experience that people are having together. Oh, that's the important part, together. And in movies. And then you think about movies, and you think about where it came from, with the silent movies, and even earlier than that, with the funny little things that they did hundreds of years ago to create an entertainment, and see where it's gone, this art form. And it's like Siskel and Ebert, they had a quote that talked about, movies are the greatest, and I'm going to misquote this, machine for emotion, because it allows the audience to live in the emotions of the characters in the movie for a short period of time. It's this ability to change ourselves for a period of time, which allows us to separate from the stresses and all the stuff in the world. And I don't know how many people in our industry are aware there's a museum in Hollywood that's going to open this year, hopefully. It's the Academy Museum of Film. And the architect of that museum, it's a beautiful building. It's great. I can't wait to be able to fly to LA and visit it, just walk through it, spend time in it. He loves film, the architect. It's such a perfect fit for him to be the architect, because he says film is the great modern art form. It combines emotion, it combines sound, it combines all these elements for us to transport ourselves to a different place. And that separation from the day-to-day is a really great thing. But now what's happening is because, and technology is one of those elements. It gives great capabilities for us, but it's also given us these things, right? Phones, iPhones, devices. And so now we're on our phones all the time, we're on our devices all the time, and we watch movies on those devices. And so if I was going to look at a Monet painting, I need to see it in its scale.
Right.
I need to see it so that I can see how the artist created light out of paint, because that's what he does. And that's art. And that's an experience that's different than what I can see of that same art on a screen. It's a different experience. Well, the same thing is true with movies. You think about the great movies, think of one of the great thing, I mentioned this one because there's a scene in Lawrence of Arabia where the horse he's riding across the desert from afar. And that scene wouldn't be made if they had to make it fit on even a computer screen for the audience, because it takes the big screen. And then the same thing is true of sound. Another friend is Andrew DiCristofano. I always butcher his name because too many syllables for me. But he is a very passionate, artistic sound designer. He created the sound design for one of the Iron Man movies. My favorite sound design that he did for me, it's subjective, is Unbroken. It's just such a rich tapestry of sound. And it's subtle, and it's got great realism. You're there because of the sound. But in a small system, in a room that doesn't allow you to actually hear the details, you miss it. And we were talking about that. He says it's one of the issues of being a sound designer is your art gets buried a lot of times. So if our clientele were to know that that's what we have the ability to deliver to them, is this art form in its great shape, and that they could actually have their own gallery. Gallery for film would be a cinema, because that's where you experience a film the way it's supposed to be experienced. Then I think there's a connection. I think there's an opportunity for us to grow the desirability of what it is that we do by making that awareness to the clientele. So that's where I'm at right now. I hope that, obviously, and I call this cinema connoisseur. That's what I call this initiative, cinema connoisseur. I call it connoisseurship, because the whole term of connoisseur came from the art world, where back in the day, nobody could tell fakes from real. So there had to be experts, and the experts were the connoisseurs. So, we're now looking for experts about film and film, private cinema and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do, is create an initiative where we can get the word out to the clientele that there's something great, there's something admirable. And I'm not saying everybody needs to have a 4-row theater in a dungeon and stuff like that. There's a lot of ways to achieve that. But it's when the clients really appreciate the difference and are seeking it, then they can have an appreciation of it. And, our lives get so busy. We're so fast. We've got so many things going on that we forget to take advantage of the most important things of life, which is to share time, to share good times and experiences with the people we love. And that's one of the things that happens in a movie theater, in a private cinema, in a media room, whatever the case may be. It draws us together, separates the day-to-day, and allows us to have that time. So I want people to realize that, so that I think it'll grow our industry, and hopefully it'll be good for my company, but I hope it's good for everybody that's involved in what we do. So I said a lot, I usually do, but that's what I'm doing these days.
Well, I mean, and your message even resonates more now in the COVID-19 era that we're in, because I talk to a lot of people, and we talk, what will you be comfortable doing as restrictions are lifted? And the last thing on the minds of so many is going to a movie theater, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And that's going to affect the business, of course, of movie making. But if we can create those spaces in homes that at least give people a place to go with their families in their own house or in their friend's home, then you're serving that purpose that you're discussing there. What other ways have you been completely shut down because of the inability to work in client projects, or have you been able to work at all during the COVID-19?
Paradise Theater is very fortunate. We've got a good base of clientele and people that we work with, and so there are people who are continuing with projects, and so we have to be careful with traveling and that sort of thing. But we're fortunate in that we've developed a process that allows us to provide very solid documentation and communicate that with the people who are on the projects during the build-outs. And so we've kind of had to shift of how we communicate with people. I pray that this whole shutdown and limitation will relax appropriately. I don't want anybody to get sick and suffer, and we're very careful with our team members about that. And we don't. My team members, my employees, I call them my team members, because without them, we don't do anything. We can't. The one-man show doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Their safety, their happiness, their satisfaction is really important to us. So we won't put them on a plane to go somewhere at their risk or at their discomfort. So we just had to work around things somewhat. But there is, as you said, a demand. People are realizing, you know what, I'm going to spend more time at home, and I don't want to give away the good things in life. And I applaud that. We shouldn't give away the good things in life, because they're given to us for a reason. So not to discard. So we're still working to help people get their private cinemas in their homes and make it happen. In the meantime, we're working to do this evangelism thing to get the word out that there is, I would, there's a New York Times article maybe a year ago talking about what's the future of film. And this is before any of this COVID issue came about. And people were concerned about the art form. That's what started me thinking about that whole art conversation. And I hope that as an industry, we can have some positive impact and help the art form stay. And there's always going to be streaming programs. I mean, I love Bosch. I love Man in the High Castle. Those are great, fun, well-produced productions. But it's different than a movie. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing. It's not the same art form. So, okay, now we've got multiple art forms. That to me is a great thing, but they're unique. And I want to see the film art form become unique. And there's another thing. I've been starting to say, what about the old movies? If I've got a great private cinema, I remember one time I did a theater for a client, and he was a real fan of the movie Dances with Wolves. Remember that movie?
Sure.
Back? And he called me up after he got his theater. He said, Sam, it's like I never saw it before, because I hear all of this atmospheric sound that was never audible to me in the movie theater and in my other home theater that I had. So, people can experience the art form even better with a great private cinema. So that's the kind of renaissance or awakening that I'm hoping to see out of what we're doing here. And maybe COVID has had a hard effect, and there's been some hard things that people have had to struggle through. And I pray that everybody will get through it as well as they possibly can. But at the end of it, let's enjoy our lives, because that is something that we have that we should not forsake. So anyway.
Well, that's a great message to end on, Sam. I really appreciate your time. Thanks, Sam Cavitt, for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it. It's always good to see you. Come to Hawaii.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really hope that we can get back to traveling again, and that will be a goal for sure.
Yep.
And thanks also to everybody else for joining us. Be sure to comment, share, or subscribe to the podcast. And you can check out all the latest residential tech news at Residential Tech Today's website, www.restechtoday.com. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.